All right, Ethnan,
Yes, sir.
welcome to the pod.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we were on a Instagram live on Friday,
Yes, sir.
and some of the stuff you were talking about was pretty fire.
Yeah,
And at the same time, you gave some props to me and some of the content that I'm talking about.
for sure.
And so I was like, you know what? I want to continue this conversation.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So why don't you kind of start us off of what you were talking about on that podcast of the discussions that people need to be hearing?
Oh yeah, for sure. My name's Ethan. I'm from Cameroon, West Africa. I was born there but raised in North Carolina, and we talked about manhood. We talked about what it means to be a man, or at least how to heal as a man and heal enough to fight for your family the right way, fight for what you need to know, fight culture. And we talked about mainly, I think the biggest thing that we were really centered around is the culture is telling men that we have to be a specific way. They're saying we have to act a certain way. But what happens in that dynamic is we begin to look more like what everybody else thinks is supposed to be a man, and we actually
Hmm.
don't become manly. Like we just become everybody else's example. Like I don't dress the way you dress, Jesse. You know what I mean? I got I got beads and pearls and stuff like. But I'm a man in my own right. But the only way we know that is our identity comes from our Creator, and some of the things that I think destroys men, and we're just going right into it, I guess. But what destroys men is um, the inability to know who they are and why they were created, and
Hmm.
also because they don't know that they actually go throughout life trying to find that in everything else but the actual source. And because the source is never right and never correct, I ultimately think that that's what perpetuates the cycle of broken men. I come from a broken home. I became broken through the process of that. My dad actually is a preacher, but he spent more time on the streets than in our house. So
Hmm.
the most of the time I saw my dad was like the backside of him. If I'm being honest, it was more of him always walking out of the door. So he was there like to provide, but he was never there to really to guide. And
Hmm.
he ultimately didn't get that from his parents because his parents died when he was a teenager, and so he didn't know what it means to father. And so like over time as I heal, um, I begin to understand, okay, I can't hold him hostage on things that he didn't know, right? But what I do know that as I'm 31 now and I'm walking through my own, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna do that with my kids. I'm not gonna do that. Oh,
Hmm.
that's what that is. That's what trauma looks like. But I've only been able to honestly answer those questions is because I'm going through therapy to heal from my trauma so I don't perpetuate the cycle.
Hmm.
But men die alone, they die silent, they die quietly, and everyone's like, "Man, what happened to that guy?" And oh yeah, he ran off, or he committed suicide, because there is these quiet battles that people are struggling with, and I'm just here to expose some of these things. You know what I mean? Man, I know you're exposing a lot of those things on with your content. It's very in your face, punch you in the mouth, kind of content, which is good. But there's also some things there that you're guiding and you're teaching men to rise up and to take that rank.
Hmm.
Um, and I think right now more than ever, we need this message. We need this message now more than ever, man. Now more than ever,
We do, and the only way to receive the message is if people are talking about it. And
for sure.
by no means am I the only one. I'm just adding to that message. And there's a
Yeah,
whole lot of messages out there, which
yeah.
is kind of why I started because I would see stuff on social media and I thought they were very unhealthy messages.
Mm,
And so, me personally, I had to be like, well, I don't agree with any of this. One example, one message I saw is somebody who has a huge following on social media was saying, you should make $1 million and sleep with 100 women before you get married. And I
so
was like,
stupid.
yeah, that ain't cool.
Hmm.
Another video I saw by a guy who has tons of following is it was him. You can see a girl like in a bikini walking away from him, and he said that he likes hundreds, but he likes tens more. And he had a bunch of cash and was referring to the tens as the women. And it's like, dude,
Mm,
don't. It was like, my advice growing up, or the thing that I did was, someone would say womanizer, someone would say like I would chase girls kind of like that. But I didn't have anyone who told me early that that was not the way to go. It's not
Yeah,
healthy.
yeah,
Not only healthy for you, but the impact that you're making on those women.
bro, dude, and
So
dumb people say that, and it's what if you got the girl that been had 100 bodies? Think about it.
yeah,
Like,
it's a
you know what I
low
mean?
value woman. I mean, you don't want that.
You wouldn't want that, but now,
No.
but you're perpetuating that cycle because
Hmm.
you're the dude. You're the one. Like,
Hmm.
once you actually think about the things that people say, it actually does not make sense.
Yeah.
Because you're what he's saying is use as many women as you want,
Hmm.
and then choose the one you want.
Yeah. No, it is,
So
and it's terrible from
yeah,
a young impressionable male standpoint
yeah,
to even an older guy who's watching social media thinking that they missed out on something,
yeah,
and then the women that it is terrible the impact on the, because a man and a woman, it's unfortunate but it's the reality, they're looked at differently. You can be a single man 35 and still be a high valued man,
yeah.
but if you're a single 35 woman and or with children and
Mm.
or slept
Also,
around too much,
oh, yeah,
nobody,
or that's been ran through.
yeah,
Yeah.
then nobody's gonna care. You're gonna not have the same value. But it
No,
is
at
us
all.
men who really, it is our fault that we are, that we're sleeping with as many women as we are, thinking
Yeah,
it's okay, and there's not going to be a negative impact on those women. It's selfish. I was very
yeah,
selfish when I was doing that,
100%. Very narcissistic for sure.
and so it's one of the things that I wanted to talk. Why I talk about it is because I didn't necessarily have anyone who was
Mm,
telling me like, dude, don't fucking do that. There's going to be
yeah.
long term consequences for those women and for me, because I don't know if you've ever heard this, but someone once told me the most crowded place in a marriage is the bedroom
Mm.
because of your guys' sexual past.
That actually is crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I can speak to it that that is, at least in my marriage, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, that that has
Mm.
had a negative impact.
Yeah,
And it's something that continuously my wife and I have to like work through to get
yeah,
over whatever it is, insecurities, thoughts, the number of things.
yeah. Man, and like, you know, we might as well just get it as real as possible. But like, I think the biggest thing, if we are being honest, when it comes to sexuality and when it comes to like semen retention, some people say, and all that kind of stuff. It always goes back to the idea of discipline, and it always goes back to the idea of value, and it always goes
Hmm.
back to the idea of like, okay, when you don't see yourself as much, anybody can touch you.
Hmm.
When you don't see yourself as valuable, when you don't see yourself as, man, like there's, like, man, like there's a calling that I have. When you don't see yourself as some of those things, dude, anybody at any time can come in and out of your life.
Hmm.
And one of the things in my own life that I've been healing through therapy, intense therapy, I'm doing EMDR now, but trauma therapy specifically, is because of my trauma, I allow people to do whatever they want, and my boundaries consistently get crushed because I want to please that person, because at the core level in who I am, I don't feel worthy enough to stand up for myself.
Hmm.
The reason why I'm sharing that is, how many men are just consistently sleeping with women out of a sheer they don't value themselves, right? And how many women are allowing themselves to be slept with and being used and abused because the value system is just so corrupt. But if we don't fix that area, Jesse, like if we don't fix that, like, this woman needs to be valued, and this
Hmm.
dude needs to be valued, and the high value that you have on yourselves bring together like somebody that makes a family unit and then thrives together. If we can't see that, because right now, if the generation, okay, if I can ask you a question, Jesse, what's there to wait in marriage if you're doing everything you want right now? Like, what's sacred?
It doesn't allow for
It doesn't
anything to
allow
be sacred.
nothing. And so there's no perseverance. There's no not man like true love waits. There's none of that because we
Mhm.
we have allowed ourselves to ejaculate off of anything and everything. And let's not talk about pornography. Let's not talk about that storm that's hit the world. And with kids as young as 6 and 7 years old being exposed to it, I was exposed to it when I was 12 years old. Um, but are exposed to it, and now they see these things on the internet, they see these things on televisions, and they want to explore these things because we live in the information age. Now we have not only insecure men and women, we have insecure men and women that are informed on how to do something their bodies are not ready yet to do. So their minds are racing, their hormones are changing, and they find themselves in this state and in this place where it's consistently being broken. And now you enter a marriage, and that marriage room, instead of you and your boo, is your boo and everybody you don't slept with. And so
Mhm.
it's definitely, man, it's something to tackle, and something to tackle hard, man. Hard.
Yeah, and when you have these insecure girls, I really put it on, where were the parents? How were they raised?
Yeah.
Because when you look at the girls who are grown up being insecure, they're not confident, they're people pleasers. It's There was definitely a lack of leadership in communication with their parents.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like how you were saying, your father was home, but he wasn't actually present as a
Yeah.
father. So same with all these group of girls who we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like they probably had parents in the household, but were
Yeah.
they actually present? Were they involved? Was there a father figure who demonstrated what it is to be treated like a woman and be able to walk with confidence? And
Yeah.
then these
Mm.
young boys who want to be like fuck boys, it's where's the discipline? Where are the fathers who are teaching them what's
Yeah.
right and wrong, how to treat a lady? I mean, I can't wait till my kids start dating. I have two sons. And just
I feel like they're gonna
the
be dogs, like
presence,
good dogs, not like
yeah,
foolish, but
and
yeah.
and the discipline, and like just the message that I'm teaching them is like,
Mm.
I made a video the other day about 4 things that a man can do to improve his life as a man. And the fourth one is, you're not a dog running around with your little pink lipstick hanging out.
Yeah.
Like, wait. And granted, I wouldn't change what I did because it's allowed me to speak on these things, and
Hmm.
it has allowed me to become the person who I am.
Sorry, are those message things coming through?
No.
Do you hear them on your? Okay, okay. I wouldn't. Sorry.
Mm-mm.
Okay. You're good.
So I wouldn't change anything, but I definitely want to speak to other people about just. I would definitely encourage your sons, your daughters
Yeah.
to literally wait, but
Hmm.
it's so much more than just encouragement. It's like
Yeah.
the leadership in the home, and
Yeah.
we've kind of gotten away from traditional values, and
What
we
you
we have to
talking
bring
about?
those back.
Man, forget traditional values. I mean, I don't even know if people have a moral compass anymore. Like if
Well,
you
yeah.
legitimately think about what's going on, and you know, okay, let's set the stage. You have a 13-year-old horny young boy, and he gets a girlfriend. She's probably going through the same thing, changes in her body, changes in his body. And then you allow them to date, hang out, chill, closed door. Where do you honestly think that's going to lead?
Hmm.
You know, so okay, okay, that maybe that's too dramatic for somebody. Let's say you go and have them hang out by themselves and unsupervised. Where do you think that's going to lead? Now, and my thing is, I'm not saying you have to be a helicopter person. You know, what I mean, my mom was a helicopter mom, and I rebelled against it 100%. But anytime she told me not to do something, on the opposite side of what she said was danger on my part. And
Hmm.
every time I engaged in it, let me tell you this right now, Jesse. The things that I did at 14 and 15 and 16 years old, me as a 31-year-old man is paying for. Think about that. Like, if I would have listened, the traumas that I went through, I would not be going through right now and trying to heal from them. If I listened, and maybe we're trying to save somebody across this screen, that you need to stand up for your kid. And by standing up for them does not mean they get to do whatever they want. Standing up for them is you have to say no and put your foot down, because their future self will thank you. Again, I'm only left live for 31 years. I've never met somebody that said, "Oh man, my mom and dad were, they were hard on me and da 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 and this that, and so I am this weird of a person, unattached." Anytime I meet one of those people, they're the smartest people in the room. They're making the most money. They're advanced because they put their mind where their mind should be at that age. But then you have the person that's consistently rebelled, and they're having to work through all these issues in their latter years because they didn't sit still, or they thought my parents were not allowing me to have fun.
Hmm.
Bro, I'm in therapy off of dumb stuff that I did when I was a teenager because of the lack of guidance, because the lack of parental supervision, or the lack of, because we came from Africa. My mom was hustling, trying to go to nursing school. My dad was doing odd jobs and pastoring. And so the streets raised us. But now I'm going through extensive counseling to get the streets out of my mind, because that culture doesn't leave you,
Hmm.
right? That use and abuse culture doesn't just leave you, right? That manipulative culture to get what you want, to be a dog, it doesn't leave you. That has to be, um, your mind has to be renewed. And so even with the content that you're giving, right, and you're speaking to men, what you're doing is you are changing the way men think. Because if we can change how they think, we can change what they do. And oftentimes, if we consistently try to change behavior without changing the mindset, they will always return back to the behavior. And so that's why the podcast is important. And this podcast specifically is important because you're changing the way men think. Because if we can change how you think, I'm telling you, what you do will be a direct correlation.
So I got a question about some of the stuff you said.
Yeah.
Um, at what point is the, because you had mentioned that from doing things when you were young as is stuff that you're still working through today.
Yeah.
So what is the difference in the mindset of allowing it to be something of your past and why you have overcome it, why you have
Mm.
values now
Yeah.
versus defining it as something that is trauma that negatively impacts you still to this day.
Oh wait, yeah. Hmm. Okay, there's a few things. Okay,
Hmm.
so I hit a wall at 27, and I didn't know what that wall was.
Hmm.
But I hit a wall because I kept shoving down everything I was feeling, and I didn't feel like the space I was in was I could deal with it. Now, I could have dealt with it in that space, but in my mind, I didn't think I could, right? And so I I wanted to dig deep to really figure out what was going on. But the more and more I realized what was going on, the more I realized I probably didn't want to deal with it. And so I came to a place to I actually legitimately wanted change. And I'll answer your question in a few different ways. Um, this is how I base my past, right? Because we all have different pasts. I don't base what I'm currently doing off of my past. I base it off of where I'm going. Um, and because of the trauma that I faced, I realized that I have to have boundaries around my life to protect it. And because of the things that I have experienced in life, I have to have these guardrails to keep me doing what I feel like I've been on earth to do. And so, because of my past, heavy alcohol, right? Heavy alcohol in my past, heavy drugs. I know that if I step into that to even enjoy it for a second, it's going to destroy my life. I just know it. And that's not me being soft. That's actually me understanding my weakness and because I understand my weakness, it's making me actually a strong person. Because man, let me tell you something. Strength is not faking that you are strong. Strength is actually admitting that you are weak so you can become strong. Because boundaries make you strong. Your values are based off of where you're going, not only necessarily where you've been. So I'm built. I- the trauma that negatively affects us actually is the trauma that positively changes us. Because it's in that change that we realize we need to help other people. It's in that change that we realize, man, maybe my purpose was not to go through that storm, but I've gotten purpose outside of that storm to help other people in their storm. And so these understandings. And so now, do we all need to heal at some level? Of course. Do have we all gone through trauma, issues, circumstances, difficulties? Bro, yeah, of course, bro. Anybody gonna stand and say they haven't? But have you healed through them to then go and help heal somebody else? That's another question. Are you still playing the victim of what you've gone through, or are you wanting to be the victor and to be an overcomer and to be more than a conqueror? That's another level. Because we and you asked specifically, how do I know something is negatively affecting me? How I know something is negatively affecting me is because I cannot show up in who I am. Oftentimes I draw back, maybe because out of being scared, being afraid, being this. There's a lot of times I walk in the rooms and I'm like, okay, why am I being anxious right now? Why am I being afraid right now? And I analyze, do breath work, breathe, do whatever I have to do. And then I realized, okay, this may stem from a deeper issue. Let me go talk to somebody about it. But then, regardless of that, I know I have to step into the situation even if I do feel fear. But, one of my best friends always say this. He says, "Man, Ethan, oftentimes you gotta just do things scared. You just gotta go into it with this fear of something may happen, but doing that is breaking the chains of it. Doing that is breaking its hold of you by doing things afraid." And I know I've gone 15 different routes in this, but I've learned that how my body responds to different things shows that, okay, I have maybe some trauma in this specific area. But man, every time I address my trauma, Jesse, bro, it makes me want to run through another wall. Like, you know what I mean? It actually doesn't make me more afraid. It actually makes me more courageous. And so whenever something negatively affects my life, I have to analyze it. Okay, why is this negatively affecting my life? And then I walk through the work that it takes to heal through it. But after you heal through it, bro, give me a baseball bat. Let's go to war. Like, you know what I'm saying? For other people. And that's why we're on this pod today.
Yeah, I like to ask because I have a, let's see, how do I describe this? I have a hard time with the amount of people in the United States who think they've experienced trauma and or need therapy. I
Mhm.
kind of feel like it's been a trendy thing,
Yeah. Oh, come on, bro.
and it's been definitely abused. So I'm always kind of curious, also skeptical on why
Mhm.
people feel this need to go. Because there is a thing called fermentation where somebody is talking about their problems and then goes to therapy and is thinking about their problems 24/7,
So
thinking
good. Yeah.
and talking about them. And oftentimes in certain therapy sessions, it can actually make those problems worse because they're
Yep.
doing what's called fermentation. Versus
Yeah.
like what you explained, you're doing a breakthrough and allowing you to go through that wall in a positive way. Not
For
run
sure.
through the wall, put me out of my misery because, but run through a wall
Yeah.
because I've just gone up a level with my superpowers.
Yeah, for sure. But and do because and I agree with you 100% on that. 100%. But there's this idea that thinking about healing is not healing. Talking to somebody about healing is not necessarily healing. Like reading posts about healing is not necessarily healing. Writing things about healing isn't, but doing the work of healing is actually what's healing. And so if I sit and just talk to the therapist, and my whole goal is just to continue to talk to you for 50 years and there's no progress being done, Okay, yeah, there's an issue there. If I'm just okay, I just really need this right now. Da da da. Maybe for some time, but if you're not growing and if there's no maturation, there's an issue there, right? And so, like, I'm not saying everyone in the world should just flood every 30%. I'm not saying that. I also do know that you go from stages in life and you mature and you grow and you develop. And if you don't do what you need to do to become who you need to become, you're always going to stay stuck in this phase of a person that's not growing and not developing and not being who you are. So you can be married, you can have more kids, you can actually ultimately have more money, but if you're not doing the work to actually become the person you're called to become, and you become a shell of a person who you are, you're not growing and developing. And ultimately, dude, I ultimately believe people around you will despise you and they'll leave you and they'll honestly almost mistreat you when you don't become who you're supposed to be. I know that sounds weird, but why would your wife respect you if you're not becoming a better man? Why would your kids look up to you if you're not becoming a better man?
Oh, they won't.
They won't.
No, I believe our life and part of masculinity is to be in continuous growth, because
100%, bro.
we will by default level up the people around us, those closest to us.
Yes. Yes.
Otherwise, they'll just on their own exit our life, or we
Yeah.
will remove them from our life.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, no, I think that it's huge when we are continuously trying to improve our lives. I think it's
Yeah.
vital. And,
Hmm.
that saying, if you're not growing, you're dying, I believe
Yeah.
in that
a
wholeheartedly.
hundred percent, bro. You're talking to the right one for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. When I have, um, gosh, my wife kind of explains it the best, but I have I'm missing a gene in my body that doesn't allow me to have anxiety, doesn't allow
Wow.
me to have depression,
Wow.
doesn't allow me to have those things. Um, I often don't know.
Like scientifically, or is that like a
No, it's just
okay?
it's
I'm
how
about to
it's
say-
how I guess I say the gene is missing because it's
yeah, yeah.
something that I've never experienced in my life, and I
Wow.
would have a hard time empathizing with people who were depressed or had anxiety.
Yeah.
And the thing, as I'm getting older and I'm getting deeper into my faith with God, that I can contribute it to
Mm.
is that I always, not always in my life, but from for a long time, I have felt that there is a greater purpose. It's that we're going to the holies of the holies one day. We're going to be at the gates of heaven,
Oh
and
yeah.
we either get let in or we don't. And
Yeah.
he's going to ask if why I'm worthy, and I'm going to say I ain't
Hmm.
worthy,
Hmm.
but I'm going to be let in. So
Yeah.
if I'm let in, then anything on this earth does not matter, and I fear no man. Like me putting myself out here on a podcast or social media for people to just talk shit, like that stuff doesn't bother me. People are
Yeah.
like, dude, you're brave talking about the things you talk about. And it's like, I'm not brave because I
Mm.
just don't fear man. I only fear God. And if in some way I can expand his kingdom,
Yeah.
then there's nothing that on here on earth that is going to cause me anxiety or
Yeah.
that I'm going to
That's
get
so good.
depressed over, because I look at God's love for me. I correlate it with gravity. Nobody
Mm.
fucking disputes gravity.
Yeah.
There ain't a single person out there, with more than one brain cell.
Yeah.
There's nobody's ever disputed gravity. It just is.
Mm.
And if we believe in God and God is objective, then his love for us is objective, just like gravity. It just
Yeah.
is. And I'm someone who's always kind of accepted that. And that for me is the closest thing I can get to why throughout my entire life I haven't really experienced gravity, or not experience anxiety, depression, just like little things like that. And why it's kind of why I've been able to just be myself and just so comfortable in my own skin. And growing up, or not necessarily growing up, but there was a time in my life that I hit that it was like nothing could embarrass me.
Wow.
because of those similar things. Just
Wow.
not now when I was really young, in like elementary school, I remember girls making fun of me, calling me chicken legs, and I was like, "What the heck? What do you mean?" And like stuff like that. But there was a time in
Mm,
like middle school, and it was just like, okay, nothing, and I don't know why, but it was just like nothing can
mm.
bother me. Um, and so the reason I share this is
That's dope.
if we have a greater purpose and if we truly have a vision of where we're
Yeah.
going, then it should negate any of the anxiety that's caused by man,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And I don't
Yeah.
know if
You know.
are you a man of faith?
Oh, dude. Yeah, bro.
Okay, I thought so.
Yeah. Yeah, bro. Bro. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay.
Yes, sir.
Let's
Oh
see,
boy.
I got mine right here.
That's what I'm talking about, bro. Heck yeah, dude.
But yeah, just something that I was trying to explain to someone like what has literally been fucking concrete for me
Mm,
and helping me just not experience some of those things.
yeah. And dude, I mean, missing Gene for sure. It sounds like
Hmm.
it sounds like man, the Lord has definitely done something incredible in you. You know what I mean? Because obviously I meet men that face incredible anxiety, depression, but it stems from a lot of those things, man. Like if we ultimately know that God is who He is, and He's created us to be um like Him. The Bible says that if we build our house on shifting and building on sand, our lives are going to crumble. But if we build upon a rock, it's going to stand firm. And what does that standing firm even look like? Like, if I can ask you a question, Jesse, like, what does standing firm look like? What does standing as a man in this society, this culture, even look like right now? You know,
On a macro level or micro.
Micro.
So, I mean, for me, standing firm is, having an unshakable faith in God.
Yeah,
This is me
100%.
truly going against the grain. Like,
Yeah.
um, when there was that flu season that started in 2020,
Hmm.
I didn't care. Well, no, this is a lie. I cared about those close to me who were going along with that because I was like, we're supposed to be a land of free men,
Hmm.
and we should be able to have the freedom to make a choice for the benefit of our family on what we decide
Hmm.
to do. If we decide to go to work, go to the gym, go to the store, etc. And I had to stand firm for all my peers around me to be like a light, whether I was right or wrong. Some people still think one was right and one was wrong.
Hmm.
But, and I don't ever blame women in those situations who, let's say, they were doubling up on their masks or they were getting the 18th booster. Like, I don't ever blame a single woman because we are
Yeah.
as men to lead and lead them to our wives to the promised land. But it's like having a moral compass and code and sticking to it no matter what. Even the people who we look up to, let's say you and I are both in a group with Ryan Pineda.
Hmm.
Let's say he does something that goes against the moral compass handed down by us from God. It is up to us as men and brothers of Ryan to be like, hey, we're calling you out
Yeah.
versus I bet you 99% of the people in that group would just go along because it's not comfortable to take a stand when it comes to what's right and wrong. People oftentimes want to go with the crowd. There's
Hmm.
so many case studies on that where they'll just have um, they'll have a group of people in a room and some of them are actors and they're standing up and then they're just sitting down writing and then the other people just stand up or just sit down. There's so many different versions of people just going along with things, or like there'll be someone
Yeah.
screaming and like it sounds like they're in pain and they ignore it and the actors ignore it and then the other people are like, okay, we'll just ignore it as well. I
Mm.
mean, it's just too hard to stand up for what is right, but we have to, and we have to, if we believe in God, then the morals set forth before us are objective. So it's hard for me to criticize someone who's a non-believer because their morals are subjective.
Yeah.
Just like what the Germans did in the 30s and 40s. It's subjective. What they did was wrong from their standpoint because they were of an atheist group of people. So to
Mm,
them, there was nothing wrong because they don't have any
yeah.
morals. They're objective.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of going down a rabbit trail, but to really stand firm is to, but you have to stand firm 100%. You can't
Yeah.
stand, you pick and choose of
Hmm.
what's popular and what's not popular.
So good. So good.
Be the in the Bible, when Jesus comes back, it's like there's a group of people who are doing their own thing, and they're like, um, we created miracles in your name, and he says, I don't know you,
Yeah.
and it's like, so were
Yeah.
those people going along something else that was cool, or
Mm,
are we sticking true and firm to what is our truth?
yeah. For sure.
I don't know if that answered your question because I went kind of down a rabbit hole.
No, 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 no. I get what you're saying, and I think what I got out of it, is um, first of all, stand on God's word. One, but you go all the way with it. I
Hmm.
think you bring a good point because the double minded man is unstable in all of his ways. The Bible says. So if you're double minded in your standing, you're not actually standing. I had a
Hmm.
good friend of mine that always says he says it's like Ethan people always say, man, you can either be you know on this side or that side, or you can be on the fence. But he was like, man, people don't understand that it's not God's side and then the enemy side, and then there's this fence. It's like, no, the enemy owns the fence. You
Hmm.
can't be on the
Hmm.
fence. You either got to be this way 100% or, or nothing at all.
That is right. You can't be
Yeah.
half in. You
Yeah.
the even bringing up the biblical aspect. Someone who is lukewarm Jesus,
Yeah.
he don't care if you're freaking lukewarm.
No, for sure.
You're not all in. You didn't jump in the
Yeah.
pool.
Yeah. But that's what I'm scared about the most though, man, because I feel like this generation is on neutral, bro.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's like I can push you to this hill, right? And let gravity do its work and push you down. And or I push you up enough and I get tired and then you go down. But there's no one actually like in drive. And I'm not saying this is the mass. I'm not, and obviously there's some people that maybe, but it's like I don't like put it in drive like the gears. God has given you all the gears you need, put it in drive. But it's almost as if no one wants to put it in drive. They're on this like neutral spot, like I'm just gonna be here, and as long as I'm here and as long as I'm chilling, as long as I'm in this space, like, oh, I'm good. But no, that space in neutral actually is owned by the enemy. Like
Hmm.
there is no neutral ground. There's either like we're warring for the kingdom, or we're actually the bait that the enemy is using to destroy somebody else. We have to we have to choose. And I think what frustrates me the most is when men don't decide, society dies.
Yeah, and
You know what I'm saying?
when I was a teenager and early 20s, I was definitely the fence rider. I
Yeah.
told everyone that I was a Christian
Mm.
and I believe in God, but my actions were sleeping with as many beautiful women as I could.
Wow.
And but to me it's like, well, I'm nice to them.
This said
And
what age you said?
in my
Teens.
teens
Okay.
and
Teens.
early
Okay.
20s,
Okay.
and I was like, but I'm honest with them because I would be, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or and I'm nice to them. I treat them with respect, but I wasn't actually treating them with respect,
Wow. Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things. And so it was like,
Mm.
well, I was actually letting the enemy get the best of me by claiming that
Wow.
I'm a
Yeah.
Christian, but my actions are, how many beautiful women can I sleep with and not suffer any sort of consequences?
Yeah.
And it's that is a prime example in my life of doing the fence riding.
Mm. Wow. Yeah.
And it's like, well, the reality is I was just being consumed by team enemy.
Oh yeah. 100%. And you're riding that wave.
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah, and in this culture, like you were saying, we don't have we don't have a large like movement, enough people yet talking about it to impact just all of our peers. And when Carl Jung, he had a good thing of, when people say they can't touch, feel, talk, or hear God, it's like Carl Jung says, do a fake it till you make it. In a sense,
Hmm.
he goes, believe, you're going to believe so hard and have so much faith that essentially the Holy Spirit is going to fill you so much that you don't need faith because it just is. You have this unshakable relationship that ends up happening with God, and
Yeah.
you just got to figure out how to get there. Um, but like we were saying, like the a lukewarm believer also is it's just not as good. So when someone says like, I'm going to believe just to prevent me from going to the deepest, darkest depths of eternity, it's like, well, if you're only believing to just prevent that, I don't know that you're getting into the Holy Land.
Yeah.
It's that thing
Yeah.
of, it's
That's good.
now I don't know, but from reading the
Hmm.
Bible, it says that we are to give our lives.
Yeah.
If he calls upon us to even leave our family for him, that is what we are to do. Now,
Mm.
Christians in America, they don't like to hear that.
Mm.
The general public of Christians, they like guess what? We get to show up on Sunday. Everything is good. We're checking our Sunday boxes in
Mm.
order to get to the Holy Land, and that's all we need to do. But
Yeah.
it's like, the when he calls for you to do something, it's like that's what, it's supposed to be more than that. Willing to leave your family for to spread the gospel. But I don't know that as a culture we're there.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, we're just
Yeah. I
barely
don't.
hanging on the fence.
Yeah, man. And and I don't know. I don't know what will awaken them, bro. Because they've endured hardship. They've endured pain. They've endured things that can turn their life around. They've probably hit people have hit rock bottom, and a lot of people don't change. And so it's almost like, man, like, is it just gonna be the few? Like, is it just gonna be a small numerical number of people who are actually living with their hearts fully
Mhm.
alive and fully awakened to God?
I mean, when we talk about like hitting rock bottom,
Yeah.
we live in 2024, and I don't think we realize how hard previous generations had it, let alone some people today in 2024 in other countries and third world countries.
Yes. Yeah.
So, culturally in the United States, you can be completely poverty stricken, still have a big screen TV, still have a roof over your head, and still
Yeah.
get food.
Yeah.
Go to some of these third world countries where they're
Yeah,
literally
bro.
fighting every single day for food, or even just go
Mm,
back 200 years ago to any country. Fucking rough.
yeah, bro.
And I think we take it for granted because it's ingrained in our DNA to survive.
Mhm.
One. And two, it's just so easy here in the US. And someone might say, well, it's like relative, because they didn't have mansions and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Escalades. It's like, yeah, that's a luxury, but it's not all relative because one group of people could literally starve and die the next day, or even in a third world country could drink the wrong fucking water and die.
Mm,
Here
yeah,
in the US, you can walk into a hospital, any hospital in the United States, and legally they are bound to take care of you.
yeah.
So we got it easy.
No, for sure, for
So
sure. When
for
when you say those
perspective,
metrics, for sure.
you know, so we're gonna have to need it to be a whole lot harder for us to really have a massive group of people just all of a sudden hit the rock bottom to where they're giving their lives
Yeah,
to Jesus.
yeah. And hopefully it doesn't take for them to hit rock bottom.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Yeah. The Bible says in Romans that there's evidence in our world that that convinces men of sin. Like, you don't have to hit rock bottom.
Hmm.
You just got to get to the place in your heart and your life that you realize, okay, man, this is What am I living for? Where am I going?
Yeah.
Why am I going this
I
direction?
didn't I didn't hit rock bottom. Mine was the second I found out I was having a family. I
Wow.
was like, okay, this is this is a whole
Yeah.
different thing, and I have got to step up.
Yeah.
And it was partially because my so for the people who don't know, my biological dad killed himself when I was about 18 months. And
Wow.
then my stepdad, who's my father today, still with my mom. It was my father from time I was a little kid. He demonstrated fucking hard work. Like you line up the hardest working motherfuckers you know, and he outworked every single one of them.
Wow.
And so as soon as I would realize I was having a family, I was like, all right, I got to start getting up at like 4 a.m. every day. I didn't know what the hell I was doing,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
was like it changed me, and I had to start to get my act together.
Wow.
And that's really probably the thing when I found out that I was going to be a dad. It's like I've got to change who I am as a person. And then,
How old were you when that happened?
um, my son was born when I was 30.
Okay.
So, and then before that, I was in Bible study groups, men's groups, going to church,
Yeah.
but it still didn't permanently
Yeah. It didn't
make,
click.
yeah. And then I ended up
Hmm.
getting baptized before my second son was born, which was cool.
Wow.
That completely changed my life. People literally
Wow.
around me, if it's like, if you want people to notice you were different, people literally a day later were like, you seem different. And it's like, I
Wow.
am different. It's
Wow.
like, yes, I'm different. I got baptized in a cold ass river. Yeah,
That's amazing. Was it a winter?
it was in the spring, so
Okay.
it was still
Okay.
all melting coming down from the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
mountains,
Yeah.
like getting freezing at night, but then getting
Dude.
like 60, 70 during the day. So it'd be like nice,
Well,
but
that'll change you.
the water was freaking cold. People try to talk me out of it. And I'm like, no, this thing, being a believer in Christ is not supposed to be easy.
Wow. Yeah.
Like if you look, like Christians are just persecuted throughout the world still to this day
Hmm.
and since the beginning. So it's not supposed to be an easy walk. So
For sure.
if I'm gonna get baptized and essentially cleanse my soul and commit to the Lord, I want it to be uncomfortable. So I wanted it in the cold river when a lot of other people got baptized on a deck in a warmed pool.
Wow.
Some other people did end up getting baptized in the river, which was cool right after me. Um, but yeah, so I got baptized and then I got married. So my wife and I weren't even married before kid number one or kid number two. So I
Wow.
got baptized and married, and those two things, getting baptized and married, are the two greatest things that ever happened to me.
Wow.
Yeah. So I guess that is into more into my story and the things that changed me versus having
Hmm.
it to be rock bottom. It was like
Yeah.
I'm responsible for people. I'm
Yeah.
responsible for
Yeah.
my wife and how I lead, and I'm responsible for these boys and how I lead. Yeah, because it comes down to parenting. Like I don't
Hmm.
believe that there's any such thing as a bad child. There's a lack of leadership,
Wow. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'll have a discussion with anybody about that. There's no
Hmm.
such thing as a bad child, just a lack of leadership.
Yeah.
And then it's the parents who program them of
Hmm.
how they're going to be as a functioning citizen by the time that they're 18.
Yeah.
How they
That's good,
respect
man.
people as a teenager,
Yeah.
10, 11, 12. It is the
Raise them up in
100%
values. Yeah.
on the parents
Hmm. Yeah. Such a good point because we blame the kids often,
because it's easy.
but yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Keep going.
No, yeah, we blame the kids often, but then we actually don't question our own issues,
Hmm.
and we don't question, okay, why are they doing these
Hmm.
things? Like it's that's never up for question. You know what I'm saying? But it's always, man, God, I got a bad kid. Oh, you keep getting, report card, all this, that, all this, all this. I'm like, well, what's really going on in that home?
Yeah.
You know, is and so I remember, you know, at 15 years old, I was asked to my mom and them asked me, not really asked me. They told me I was moving back to Africa because crime and all that kind of stuff. I was just getting myself into a lot of stuff, and that was the single most greatest thing they did for me
Hmm.
because of the trajectory I was going on. I was really, really into some dumb stuff, but that ended up saving my life. But think about your mom and dad putting you on a plane. They didn't ride with me, but they put me on a plane at 15 years old to go to Africa and live with my cousin for 2 years. It was probably one of the hardest things they did.
Hmm.
I know they did. It was the hardest thing they did, but man, it saved my life because I ultimately gave my life to Jesus in one of those schools in Africa. And so, out of all my life, that was a huge moment that they had to release me to God, you know. And so, and the Lord ultimately, changed my life and changed my heart, and I gave my life to Him, and I've been walking with Him ever since. But that was like a sign of huge leadership. Now, some people would be like, "No, you should have just stayed in Africa. I mean, stayed in America, and they should have, instructed you in the ways." But I was so far off what they could ever teach me or give me because of just my anger towards them or my anger towards life that I needed to step out of America.
Hmm.
And when I went to Cameroon, I saw how they were living. Something in me radically changed, and ultimately, I think it prepared my heart to receive the gospel. If I'm being honest.
So you went to Cameroon?
Yeah, Cameroon, West Africa. Yeah.
Okay. I got a question. In wherever you were in Cameroon, because I assume it's a large country.
Decently. Yeah.
So at what age are the boys considered men culturally
Hmm.
or
It's definitely
historically?
not really. Yeah, it's definitely not an age thing. There's no like 13 with the bar mitzvahs. And there's nothing like that. But when you were a kid, I'm being honest. When you were a kid, you were really raised to be a man.
Hmm.
Now it's different because of the influx of Western like civilization and Western media and all that.
Hmm.
But man, back then, like when you were a teenager, you had responsibilities. Like you were responsible of some stuff, and I remember people, I remember kids would be out on the market selling stuff because their parents had no money.
Hmm.
So think about you being a kid, your childhood, you had to grow up faster than what you probably needed to support your family. Like I mean, that's manhood. That's taking responsibility. I think manhood is honestly is not necessarily an age that you reach, but I think it's a maturity and a responsibility that you take.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree. And the reason I said age is because
Hmm.
there's some cultures that it's like you're groomed to be a
Mm.
man by
Yeah.
X, and they have
Yeah.
traditions of how they get you prepared for when you are
Mm.
12 that you have became a man, and it's the maturity that you've built, like you
Mm.
said, from 3 years old, helping out the household. How many 3 year olds help around the household in the United States? I'm going to go with a big fat zero. And if someone says them, it's still a zero because we're going percentage wise.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
they're helping, they're literally pulling their weight as a 3 year old in some of these other countries, and they're being matured and developed. I told this story once before that my great grandfather in 1926, he was 13 years old. He bought his own car because he already had his own
What?
job in the United States. He had a
Yeah.
job. He was born in 1913. He worked and he was treated on how he represented himself as a man and how mature he was. The
Dude.
13 part, there wasn't the term teenager until I think the 1960s in the United States. There
Mm.
wasn't you're just a teenager. It's, hey, this man's 13. He wants to buy this truck. He bought like a Model T truck, and he had a business, and he was
No,
13.
wow.
Now, if I got my son ready to buy his first truck at 13 and driving, people would lose their fucking shit.
Yeah, they
And
would.
it's like, that's because culturally, we're just raising giant fucking toddlers with no responsibility. So, kind of how, like you were saying, there wasn't necessarily an age, but there was a maturity thing. We've
Yeah.
lost that in the United States too. It's like people want their toddlers to grow up really quick. Their babies and toddlers grow up really quick. But then you get to a certain age to these preteens and teenagers, and then we baby them again. And
Mhm.
it's like, it seems a little backwards. It seems a little
Yo, for
back asswards.
No, and dude, they're only replicating what they've seen.
Hmm.
In that perpetual cycle, something has to, I was reading this quote. It was, man, this ran in my bloodline until it ran into me. You know what I mean? Like, that's
Hmm.
what we need to actually be aggressive on, is those things that have been passed down that don't serve us,
Hmm.
right? Like those things that are passed down that they're actually not helping us.
Hmm.
Those things that pass down that they're actually, it is not doing what it's supposed to do. So and I love the language that you use, man. Like, because we have to stand up against those things that we actually don't want to see replicated in our family. It's nothing that you we can passively do. We actually have to aggressively go after it. Like this, oh, maybe it'll be better. That no, it's like I am doing everything I can on God's green earth to make sure that my family becomes everything they're supposed to become, and they're not going to perpetuate the cycle I saw in my grandparents, I saw in my parents, and I even saw in me. No, I'm going to do something right here, right now, that changes that. I ultimately believe salvation changes that. I believe you believing in Jesus changes that. I think it breaks the yoke. But then now you have to go into rewiring people's minds, right? To actually now, okay, now that I'm saved, I know I'm saved. I know I believe in the Bible. We're both token our Bibles, which is awesome. You know what I mean? Like we know what the word is saying, but now, okay, how can that word now live in me, right? And begin to do, because I think the ultimate man, the ultimate gangster, the ultimate OG was Jesus. Bro, he was so gangster, bro. You read in the Bible, bro, like how he treated people with kindness, but then when the Pharisees came to try and trick him, like he was so sharp, but he was like this perfect image of a man. Jesus was, right? And so we have like a manuscript on how we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to treat each other, and how we're supposed to live our lives. You know what I mean? We just got to get people back to reading this and then walking in it.
Oh yeah, and I believe in everything you just said, especially about Jesus. And another thing about Jesus that people often try and misinterpret is like people think he was a pacifist. It's like read some read John 2 when there was people in the temple trading and selling and collecting money, and he went out and made a whip and told them all
Mm,
to get out with force. Or
yeah,
read,
flipping tables,
yeah,
bro.
flipping tables, and
Yeah,
nobody tried to stop him because of that's how fierce
yeah.
he was able to be. But
Come
then
on,
he was
bro.
also able to be the most loving and caring person all at the same
Mm,
time.
yeah,
And then how he comes back on a on a white horse with a sword, and
yeah.
it's like that is what Jesus is, the most masculine man,
Mm,
because of the ability to be loving and caring, empathize for people, and then the
mm,
ability to commit controlled violence.
yeah. Dude, you know what Jordan Peterson, I don't know if you follow Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, he's my boy.
Uh yeah, man, he says something about, a dangerous man is a man that actually has no self-awareness. But a man that's amazing is the man that he knows he's dangerous, but he's self-aware. A man that knows he can kill, or he's gained the skills to kill, but he doesn't, is the man that knows he can get angry, but he doesn't. Like, so he talks about actually the man that is, an incredible and a strong man is a man that has learned skills, developed habits, and is consistent in doing things that actually can affect the world, but he is such a temperate person. Like, it just reminds me
Hmm.
of like Jesus, bro. Like, he was so tempered, didn't have to be tempered. Like, he could have did whatever he wanted to do. He was God. But how he lived his life and the way he lived his life, man, if we can just be a little bit like him every day, we'd be all right.
Exactly. And to kind
Yeah.
of bring it full circle with what you were saying earlier about changing our family tree, is that we got to be
Mm.
humble enough to realize that we're just doing the same thing our
Yeah.
father taught us, and his father taught him, and his father taught him.
Yeah.
We got to be humble enough to realize that we have to reprogram ourselves entirely.
Yeah.
And we live in a culture of pride, and so
Mm.
it can be hard for people.
Yeah. And and what's the first thing that messed up, Lucifer up in heaven? Pride. Like,
Hmm.
what I'm saying? Like, and I think us men, one of the biggest things we have is pride and ego. Like, man, those things rob us of every good thing, God's given us.
Yeah, that is. That is true. There's a handful of
Mm,
good quotes out there about, a prideful man will always end up in failure in some
mhm,
fashion or another.
100%.
But this, Ethan, man, this has been good. And
Man, thank you so
I
much,
think,
bro. It's
man,
been
we should
awesome.
do another one of these. Well,
As soon as
I
possible.
mean, well, I'll see you next week a couple times on some of these calls that
Yeah.
we're both on, but we should keep this going. And I appreciate you hopping on. And
No, heck yeah. Hopefully I see you on Friday as well, going live with Kate.
oh
I
yeah,
think I think that's the thing. I don't know, but we'll see.
yeah, I'm curious if that's a thing too.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.